Well, he's got snow in Havre, Montana. We've got snow in Seattle. We are kindred spirits. It's Ryan Divish from the Seattle Times. We're going to talk all things baseball. His weekly chat is brought to you by, of course, Chalet Bowl. All right, go bowling right now if you can, if it's open. Chalet Bowl, located in Tacoma's historic Proctor District. They've been serving the community since 1941. Book your next reservation, chaletbowl.com. Well, Jerry does it again. Like Britney Spears. Oops, I did it again. That's pretty good.
You're ruining that video and that song for me.
Do you think, so you don't envision me in a schoolgirl outfit right now?
With pigtails? No.
Was that where I knew exactly where I was when that video dropped? Exactly where I was. I was a freshman at Washington State. Wazoo, watching in my room, going, okay, wow.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was probably, because I'm a little older than you, right?
Yeah. Well, probably a lot.
What you want? If we stood side by side and asked people who was older, who do you think wins?
Me, because you're in better shape. You take better care of yourself. You're committed to your craft and to your body, mind, and spirit.
No, I'm fat as a house right now, but I'm Asian, and we don't age as much as you white people do.
Yeah, but hey, but you know what happens.
Yeah, then we turn into one of the,
before.
We turn into one of the California raisins.
It happens fast for you.
Yeah, but I reference the California raisin shows how old I am.
Hey, are you trying to hide your identity right now?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm leaning back in the chair. I need a fire and
you need a cocktail. It's I mean, it's still kind of morning, but it should be cocktail time.
It's Bloody Mary time, I guess. So
yeah, of course it's Bloody Mary time. He did it again. He did it again. God, he's the gift that keeps on giving, Divish. I love him.
For you, yeah. For me, it's just fodder for the Twitter nuts out there.
They're fun.
The thing is like in the moment, when he's talking, okay, you might as well let him know. Like, so obviously everybody knows Jerry Dipoto he had a Zoom conference call the other day,
right
after they made the Jorge Polanco sighting official. I mean, I think with no pre-spring training luncheon anymore and everything else, I think we're kind of like, that was our kind of last chance to talk to him before spring training starts. And I wouldn't say it went off the rails, but it didn't go maybe as well. Because when you're on Zoom and it's not a free for all, and it's hard to follow up. But you ask the question, and then he answers, and then for me, I'm listening, but I'm also trying to, I'm working on a story on it, taking notes. And then he gives kind of long filibuster type answers. So you don't pick up everything he's saying. And he also does the Russell Wilson thing where he lists everybody on the roster and everybody in the organization as well. And so then you miss certain phrases or one sentence here, in a 7 or 8 minute word answer, you might miss something. You're like, ooh. And so when I went back to listen to some of it, or I was going through the transcript, I'm like, wait, did he really say this? And then, for a while there, I thought that maybe Twitter was overreacting because that's what they do, especially Mariners Twitter, especially to anything Jerry says, it's just automatic. And then I went back and listened to it all again. And then looking at it on paper, I can see why there was some anger, and I'm just like, oh man. And then I texted with Jude and Calkins and Burrell. I'm like, so we probably won't hear from Jerry till when?
Does anyone prep him?
I think so, but I don't know
who is in charge of prepping him. Because I'm telling you, I will provide my services for free.
Oh yeah, you're the Puckett crisis firm, and I'm the consultant of common sense, and you're the crisis firm. It's common sense consultant.
It's so easy. It's so easy. It's not difficult. It's a game. We didn't do enough. It's on me. We're gonna get better. We just couldn't pull off enough deals, and the market just wasn't there for us. But hey, it is what it is, and we've just got to, it's. I take the onus, and I don't think we did. I think we improved our team better. I think the team's better than the rest. Maybe the fan base thinks, maybe the media thinks, but perception is the perception. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, I mean,
take it on yourself. It's so easy to do.
It's just like, yeah, you could say like, look, we might have overestimated or underestimated the free agent market and what things cost. We thought we had a couple deals in line, and at the last minute they fell apart. We were able to go out and get a couple players that we still think makes us a little bit better than what we were before. We're going to need players that maybe had down years to bounce back for us to be competitive. And then we'll continue to try and find ways to make it better until then. And if anybody is still interested in making a trade, we'll still listen because we want to get better, but it wasn't the way we wanted it to go right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, but when you come out and you just, and listen, I don't think they should not look at the last 6 weeks of the season. 34 games is 34 games. Now, the bigger sample size is the majority of the season, but I do believe there were positive trends in the last 34 games. So I do believe, like, when those numbers reflect where they were offensively, yeah, I think it was headed in the right direction, Was it just the factors of Dan? Was it just the factor of Edgar? How much haven't done a deep dive in all 34 games they played. I mean, I briefly looked at the schedule. It wasn't like they were playing the who's who in the final 34 games of the season. Now, I'd like to go back and look at the pitchers that they faced in those games. I bet you that had a little something to do with it as well. But, I mean, my eyes told me that they looked different. I mean, I could see it. I totally could see it. But you are banking, like, what they did in the final 34 as that's just going to carry over for the rest of the season. That's a big gamble.
Yeah, I mean, like it's like you said, it passed the eye test.
Yeah,
it was better. The eye test was better. It looked better. It looked more like what they should have, or I think what they were expecting to be like. But yeah, that's 34 games. It's it's 1/6 of the season or whatever. I mean, like that's not how it, like, the season's so long, and then you don't take into account injuries and other stuff. I mean, like, banking on 34 games. I mean, that's what happened with Shed Long. You remember Shed Long had great 34 games. Dylan Moore in the 2020 season had a great 60 games or last 35 games, and they decided to make him a starter. It didn't work. Everybody always says sample size, you can use it to your advantage or your disadvantage. I mean, I think it's fair to be skeptical to say, like, look, those 34 games, that doesn't necessarily, play out over a full season. But I mean, like, I guess for me, if I was going to look at those 34 games and say, okay, why would I believe that will continue, or why would I believe that taking those 34 games and projecting it to be something better is not what we saw, or like the overall numbers from the whole team. It's what we saw from one player, more or less, that makes me think, okay, this is a lot better. And that's Julio. I mean, Julio was better in those 34 games when he started kind of changing his approach, when he kind of hit rock bottom and decided, look, I got to make some adjustments, and I'm going to listen to what the guy with the statue in front of the media entrance is going to say. I think that's a big lifter. I mean, like, but so you look at it this way. Going into last year, they were banking on JP Crawford to have something close to the year he had in 2023, which was his best year ever. It didn't happen. He got dinged up. It didn't happen. You're banking on Mitch Garver or even Mitch Haniger to be something close to what they've always been. They weren't. Jorge Polanco wasn't. He was dinged up. So then you go into this year. Are you really expecting Victor Robles to be the guy you got for the 50 games he was here? Or do you think he's closer to what he's always been? Randy Arozarena, if you look at his numbers, they weren't great. They weren't outstanding. And they certainly weren't what he was 3 years ago, which is precisely why the Rays traded him, because they thought his approach and his skill, or his approach and his production, was diminishing while his contract was escalating. So, like, you can go through the list of guys and sit there and say, yeah, there are potential pitfalls with all of them. I mean, injury being every one player, but like there's nothing to say of the team that's, the projected roster to sit there and say, okay, these guys are all going to be this, because that's not how baseball works. And, none of these guys that they have on their roster have been consistent enough to earn that label, except for maybe like Cal Raleigh for the most part. And he's been the most consistent one out of all of them because, he's not, the fluctuations haven't been huge. He still hits for power. He doesn't have a huge average. He's still pretty clutch. He still plays a lot. But the rest of them, you don't know. I mean, that, at least from the position player side, like the pitching side, Logan Gilbert, you know where you're going to get,
sure.
And George Kirby, you look at those guys that are younger, you see the trajectory going up. But like from the position player side, like to sit there and say there's evidence that these guys will be something what they've always been, or trending in the right direction, or even evidence of a bounce back. I mean, like that's the thing. Like Polanco, Garver, Haniger, if they're on, whoever's on the team, these guys that were down last year but were getting older. Bounce back seasons are more difficult as you get older because it's just that much more difficult. So, if you just come out and say like this is the roster we could put together, it wasn't exactly how we wanted to work. We still think it can be very competitive because we have enough pieces in place that we still, we added minimally, but we can still add and all this other stuff. I mean, I think that's a better way of saying it than coming out and trying to say that everybody else is reactionary and stupid, even if they are,
right,
to what they saw last year, whatever. I mean, like,
but I think that's the problem right there.
Yeah.
Is that he is saying that you guys don't know baseball. You don't know baseball like I do. Like this is a good team. I mean, the quote that you had in the paper said, I think there's a reality of our offense and then there's the perception of our offense. Yeah. I mean, it's the same. I mean, I don't know why he thinks it's different. I mean, he goes, we play in a tough ballpark to hit it. That's true. Absolutely. It's a tough ballpark. Our offense, though, has generally been above average on advanced metrics, WRC plus, and things like that for a number of years. Last 3 years, we've actually had a very stable offense that's particularly good on the road. We didn't feel like we needed to do a whole lot, but to find ways to support the group that we had. I know the offseason has been long and seemingly slow, but we do feel like we've made a lot of progress last year. I mean, that's the killer quote. I mean, it doesn't take much of to look up what his road splits last year were. I mean, they were 20th in batting average. They were 12th in on base. They were 15th in slugging. They were 13th in OPS. They struck out 25% of the time, and their WRC plus on the road was 13. I think at home was 11. So, again, he's not top 10 in anything. Not one category is he top 10, and that's just on the road. And then off, overall, they were 21st in runs. They were 25th in slugging. They were 27th in doubles. They were 29th in average. They were dead last in strikeouts. I mean, that is not a good offense. I mean,
no,
maybe he's trying to pump his team up. I don't know.
Well, it's honestly like saying is we were less terrible on the road because we were god awful at home.
Yeah,
like, that's the thing is like, yeah, we were. And I think like some of the top 10 stuff, I think he mentioned like a 3-year span, but like, when you're evaluating players, you use 3-year spans, but like with teams, can't use a 3-year span because
it's not even remotely the same team.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Just every year it changes.
And then like it does even out, but like what you're trying to address is how do you make the team from a year ago better, the following year. And sometimes those 3-year totals or the 3-year averages don't pretend. I mean, because like we said, like Mitch Garver's 3-year average probably says he's a pretty good player, but he's getting older every year, especially with guys that are over 30. So, yeah, I mean, to me, I look at it this way: how good were they at generating runs per? I mean, like it's a simple stat, but runs per game. I mean, in a lot of ways. I mean, because you can take any stat or any analytic and use it, and if you use the right dates or the right metrics, it can give you the information you want to hear, but you have to take the whole of it. And to me, like you can use runs created and all that stuff. It's a nice metric, but how about actual runs scored?
That's what drives me nuts about that stat. That's what drives me nuts about it.
Yeah, I mean,
And
like,
I understand it. It's the weighted runs. Oh, fine, great. It's fine.
It's a good metric to have, but it can't be the only one.
You can't lean on that and then tell your fan base, well, just because we didn't score a lot of runs, we were supposed to.
Yeah, in the weighted run created, we would have scored if it was weighted properly.
But doesn't.
Well, because
that's why, he's like this is like a computer game to him. This is it's not real. It's not real life sometimes. Like he even talked about how and I'll find the exact quote. Maybe if you remember it. Hey, we've already seen the early projections on the win totals. We're feeling pretty good. What the hell does that? Who cares about what Fangraphs or Zips is coming up with? I mean, it's about actual wins, Jerry. Like, how many games are you going to actually win? I mean, it seems like he gets caught up in, well, these projections are saying we should have, I'm just throwing out a number, 88 wins. And if we don't get that, well, that's not my fault. That's, that computer told us we were going to get that.
Well, it's like even like the weighted runs created thing, like, because they bring in the park factors and all that other stuff. So it's like you should, but at the end of the day, this is your park. You have to play and you have to find ways to score runs, and it's going to be difficult. And they admit that. Sure. I think probably more than I've ever heard people within the organization like publicly blame the park or publicly use the park as a reason for lack of success.
Yeah, but you can't have it both ways too, because it also benefits you immensely.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, it totally benefits the pitchers. Yeah. God, I just look at like you can use the metrics and everything else. They weren't great in situational hitting because of the strikeouts. I'll say they struck out too much. Maybe that gets better. And they just didn't score runs. And like, how do you score runs in this day and age? We got to get on base. You have to put the ball in play, and you have to be able to, at some point, hit the ball out of the park or get extra base hits, because they're not going to be a high average team. Nobody's high average anyways. So it's like, did they get better? Are they going to be better by, like they didn't add enough talent to where it's like, okay, we've made ourselves better just by adding depth and talent, so our lineup can offset people that are struggling or people that are not producing. And so then now you have to turn to your approach and your philosophy, and then like what guys have always done as a way to say, well, look, no, we can still be good because he's always been this way. This was an anomaly last year, but like when 5 guys have an anomaly seasons, you have to adjust and think, well, maybe at least 2 of them, this is who they're going to be moving forward.
And you once again are saying, and I agree with this, and you touched on it earlier, that a lot of this has to do with 44 and how is he going to come out of the gates, right? Mm-hmm. But we've discussed this, like at the same time, yes, he needs to play better. It does raise the whole team. But then you are still putting so much pressure on him, and then he puts pressure on himself to sit there, well, I've got to carry it all because they're all looking at me, they're all depending on me, and if I don't play well, then they don't play well. And rather than giving him help, they haven't given him help at all around the roster. I mean, you got an aging guy to play with Solano. I mean, I guess is he DH first? Okay, you got that. You are banking on Polanco, who just had again knee surgery. So who knows how he's going to react to that? I know what they said, but we have to see it. Who's, again, to your point, getting older. Maybe last year was just an outlier. We'll find out. But I mean, other than that, they just didn't add anything to improve the baseball team. They added what ifs, cheap deals, because that's all they could afford.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's not like he's going to come out and publicly complain about the payroll.
Well, he can't, and he knows he's protecting ownership.
Yeah, he's protecting ownership and protecting himself. Like, he wants to keep his job. Like this is, I mean, like, it's a good job. You don't want to lose it. Coming out and trashing ownership isn't good. I mean, I was told that like there were people within the organization that didn't like when Service said, "Hey, we have to play the hand we're dealt." Like, they don't like it when you speak to the reality of the situation. And I mean, like, but it's true. Like, that was the best thing that could have been said last year for the front office was said by the manager in a lot of ways. Hey, we have to play the hands we're dealt. We can't complain about it. This is what we have, or this is the situation we're in. And we'll go out and we'll do our best to put to be competitive. That's what you say. It's like, look, even if you like, because like the Twins are going through this right now, and the Rangers did last year, and there are other teams just say, hey, look, this is the reality of our economic situation doesn't give us a lot of opportunity to do that, to make the investment we want. So we have to try and piece it together right now, but we're going to try and find ways to invest more. But that would require the ownership to come out and say it. And I do think like the Twins are doing this because the team is up for sale. Another reason they're doing this, the team's up for sale. I don't think that John Stanton and Chris Larson have any intention of selling the team. And I do think
it's interesting you bring that up, though. That I don't know. I agree with you, but I wonder if.
No, I think this is two businessmen running a team like a business instead of running like a team, a baseball franchise. And that's the difference. I mean, nobody, I think like the Mariners and Dipoto had the best of intentions going into this offseason. I think that they felt like they could take their $15 million that they had and get a decent piece and try and be a little bit better. I think they knew they were pretty limited. But, they just, it didn't work. Santana didn't work, the trades. And then even like the Luis Castillo thing, when it became apparent like that they could trade him, the moves, the return wasn't going to be as great as what Castillo provides. If you're measuring on projections or, the war of a player, like what they were going to give up probably wasn't going to be enough in return to truly make a difference for this offense if they weren't going to be able to supplement. And then once like Christian Walker and some of those guys were off the board, well, even if you trade Castillo, get a decent player in return and some money and everything else, you didn't have any money to spend it on.
Do you think Dipoto likes? Do you think he likes spending money on free agents? If he were given an open checkbook, do you think he likes it?
Well, I mean, he did sign Albert Pujols to that ridiculous contract.
Yeah, but did that change him?
No, I wouldn't think so. I think all GMs or a lot of GMs are hesitant for that 10-year deal or whatever, unless it is Juan Soto, unless you're going down that road because, everybody's doing it. But yeah, I mean, maybe he's a little risk averse. I think being around this ownership group for better part of a decade now makes you risk averse in a lot of ways because they force you to be risk averse. So your thinking shifts in that regard. And, I mean, I'm sure in a lot of ways, the draft, develop, and trade mantra that Jerry has sold these guys on as part of the rebuild and everything else. And
but why doesn't he trade?
Because nobody wants prospects anymore. It's like somebody was saying, well, I don't understand, then just play the kids. Well, if somebody thought that like Cole Young was close to major league ready and they were a year or two away, they would have traded for him or, Las Montez or stuff like that. But everybody believes they have a chance. Everybody but the Rockies. Well, the Rockies, I don't know what the Rockies think because they're just one of the dumbest organizations.
No one knows.
But like the only teams that are really trying to sell are the Marlins and the White Sox. I mean, 5 years ago, when the Mariners were in their rebuild, think about how many teams were trying to rebuild then. The Orioles was still rebuilding. The White Sox were out of the rebuild and then in the Reds. I mean, like more teams were doing that. And now only two do because everybody has a chance at the postseason and 86 wins can get you into the postseason. I mean, for Manfred, everybody's trying to win. It's a lot better, it's better for them in the MLB that so many teams they're getting, because they're not going to get to parity, but they're getting to a point where the competitive window for most teams is high, similar to the NFL. They just are doing without a salary cap. They just, by widening the postseason field, and because like 3 of the franchises are paying for most of the talent, the rest of the franchises kind of all compete with each other. And then the goofy thing about baseball is you can still win even if you don't have the most money. But yeah, I just like nothing. Like when I went back and listened to that, all that stuff, it just didn't go right. I mean, probably the saving grace for Jerry and a lot of that is that it wasn't carried on TV. I know people have the video and stuff, but in person, sometimes, I know that some media members and some fans feel like the condescension is a little bit, it's higher than than his predecessors or most people. Like they feel like they're being talked down to a lot. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there is because we're not in the job. We haven't risen to that level. But at the end of the day, it's a results-based business, as they always say, and the results have been less than ideal for at least fan expectation. I don't know what the ownership expectation must not bother them because they've made postseason once.
It doesn't bother them. That's the thing. That's the biggest red flag of all this.
Yeah.
Let's say they go this year. This will be, I get lost. This is his 10th year, correct?
Yeah, he got hired right before the 26th season.
But completing this will be okay. So they go through this year, and if we just let's go glass half empty for a second, they miss out again. One postseason appearance in a decade. I mean, that's you. Most companies, sports organizations, the person leading the team loses their job. That is not good enough, and I think everyone acknowledges that's not good enough. And then going into your 10th year of leading any organization, when you say, hey, I found the quote, the early projection systems feel like we're right in the mix. That's not what you were supposed to be in 2025, quote, right in the mix. With this pitching staff, you were supposed to be competing for a World Series championship. And not, hey, quote, we're right in the mix. But what you bring up, which is, again, and I don't want to let Dipoto off the hook here, and I want to circle back to him in a second, is this ownership. I'm with you. I just don't really think they care. I think they care about the bottom line and how much money they can bring in, and they've been very successful in the last, especially 5 years. And that they look at the bottom line, how many people are coming to the ballpark, how much money people are spending, and they go, yeah, hey, we haven't won anything, but you know what? We're still making a lot of money. That's good. I think that's the most important thing to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were profitable even when they weren't competitive.
They were profitable in COVID.
Yeah, but now they're just good enough or competitive enough to be really profitable, even with the losses to Root Sports. And I mean, again, that's a nice thing. We're talking about two billionaires that own the majority of the team. Again, like that's not a small amount, inconsequential amount of money.
Right.
It has to be. And I mean, the rest of the ownership group it's not just people that bought in for 10 cents. They all have money. It's like at some point it has to be important to win and to do something more than be competitive. Like it's like the standard and the expectations and all that other stuff and all that coach speak. At some point, just being competitive isn't good enough. I remember like Service always said, like, trying hard isn't good enough. Everybody tries hard. It's what are you willing to do to get beyond that, beyond the trying hard, all the hang the banner jokes and everything else. At the end of the day, it won't change unless somebody in that ownership group says, you know what? It's nice that we're competitive. It's nice that we draw good crowds and people love going to the stadium and everything else. And we put a good product out there and it's a great place for families and everything else. Until somebody just says, no, we have to be something more than we've been. And we have to strive to be something in the elite, then it won't change because there's a comfort level there, And I've said it before, like, I think they want to win. I think they're uncomfortable with some of the risks that comes into trying to win, to really wanting to win, to putting it out there and saying, look, we're going to go in. And nobody has to sit there and say, go all in. But you have to invest more, and do more into the team and into the product to reach that next level. Because what we've seen is while everything that they did in this philosophy of, the draft, develop and trade and just this whole plan from the rebuild, they've done a lot of nice things and they built it up. But that last little kicker to get to finish it off, they haven't been able to do. One, because they won't invest more into it. And two, like the moves that they have made to try and finish it haven't been good enough, but that's based on the fact that they haven't invested. That's what the problem is.
But it does, and we've discussed this before. They have found pitching. They've been great at finding that, developing that. Does he know how to build an offense? Does Jerry Dipoto and his crew know how to build a sustainable offense? Do they have the eye and the coaching to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's up for debate. Certainly, it's like, how do you build a roster, or how do you build a lineup? I mean, you can certainly question whether or not their ability to scout professional players, or players in the big leagues, and assessing their capabilities and talents for T-Mobile Park and beyond might be lacking, because a lot of their acquisitions have failed. I mean, like, if you look at their most solid performers, they came from within the organization. Cal and Julio. Luke Raley was a nice player, developed a lot by the Rays and Dodgers, but the rest of them, that, like, even you could even argue JP kind of came up because they got him so young.
Yeah, I would factor him in there.
Yeah, but like they don't, their ability to assess talent at the MLB level could be questioned. And some people, like, you get all these old scouts and stuff talk about it. Well, if you recall in 2020, when they were cutting payroll, or they're cutting personnel payroll, not player payroll, and they fired a bunch of their pro scouts and turfed Tom Allison, their pro scouting director, one of the most respected guys. They're trying to get back into it. Like this last year, they hired a bunch of on-the-ground pro scouts because they were doing most of it off of video. But this year, going into this last season, they hired a bunch of pro scouts to go around and be at these games and scout these players in person and see. So I think part of it was you didn't get the Jesse Winker where everybody hated him. Like, you can go and see how they act and different things.
Which is a huge part of it. It's not just the player. It's not just how they produce on the field. You're right.
Yeah.
How do they get along with people? How do they interact with coaches and teammates?
Yeah. So it's like that part, I think, is lacking, But again, like, it's funny, like I always said, they convinced them to rebuild. Yeah. But part of the rebuilding was they didn't have to spend as much money, and they still were able to draw fans because they can market the team really well. I think that's my biggest issue, or like my biggest drawback. You can get mad at Dipoto, but he's a victim of the he's part of the circumstances. Everything is dictated. He might have sold them on this though, and helped push them in this direction is the thing. But I think if you're him, and I know that there are other people in the front office feel like they got sold a bill of goods on the idea that they would reinvest money into this team after they rebuilt and took those hits. I mean, like, they were operating on a minimal payroll for many years, and they still never reached the payroll they had at 2018, at the end of Cruz, Cano, and all that, where the upper echelon, they were in the top 12 or whatever. I mean, I don't know what the inflation rate is, but like, what does the $175 million payroll now equate to in 2025? It's probably closer to 200 million based on just simple inflation of the game and salary structure. Well, they're not operating that. They're at like 140.
Yeah, it's and I think where I'm not going to just completely let Dipoto and his crew off the hook. I don't think anybody is. I mean, I do always think it's just going to be a majority of this issue has been an ownership issue, has been an ownership problem. But to your point, when he's been given the ability to go out and acquire talent, whether it's via trade, I mean, for the most part, it hasn't worked. I mean, he hasn't really nailed anyone. I mean, he's got some he's okay players. And I was even thinking about, one of his better trades was one of the better players from it was just a throw-in in a way. I mean, Suarez was just an afterthought when you think about it.
He was a salary dump. They had to take Suarez so they could get Winker.
Yeah, it was just that, okay, just take him. Like, all right. And then he turns out to be one of the better ones he's ever acquired, but he wasn't even the headliner. Like, to your point, the headliner was Winker, so he kind of dumb lucked into that, and then they end up saying, well, we don't want to invest in you anymore, and we'll let you, walk on and move elsewhere. So
I get the signing a free agent hitter to come to Safeco or T-Mobile is difficult, and you have to pay over market value. But then the businessman side of this should take over for ownership. If the perception of of this place is that it's miserable to hit, and we have to overspend to acquire assets. Why not control what you can control, which isn't the opinion, and adjust the park or do something, whatever it takes to make it more attractive? Because I do think, like everybody says, oh, it'll affect the pitching. I think the pitching is still good enough that they can still have success there, but make it, do something more to make it a more attractive place for hitters, so you don't have to overpay. So it doesn't get like you have a malfunctioning aspect of your business, and you can look at all the reasons why. And some of it is very fixable with less investment than overpaying a player for it. Then maybe do that. But if you're gonna run it, if you're gonna run it like a cold hard business, then make some fucking business decisions that are smarter. Like if like how do you invest? It's like the Mariners. It's funny, like they run it like a business, but then they they lay off all these employees making $65,000 a year or $70,000 a year as if a way to save structure when they, it's so, it's like the hatback. It leaks money. Well, make an adjustment, like this is the problem I have. If you're going to run it like a business, do smarter business things to make it more efficient so that you can operate on your shoestring budget, but you've invested dollars properly. So that's a more viable way of doing things, whether it is fixing the park or doing something else. It's something more, but then, or else invest more in the players so it gets better. And then you can make it more attractive. It's like all this does is make them come off looking cheap, not business-like, just cheap. And that's the difference, or greedy, cheap and greedy. And that's
I think that's it. I mean, and this has been a narrative that has plagued them forever. This has plagued them for 20 plus years. And everyone's, it's not a different ownership group. This is the same group that has been a part of it, since 2000, 2001. It's the same group, just different names. They've all been a part of it. And they changed chairs on the Titanic. That's it.
Well, yeah, to me, it's like, what is your measure of success? And I mean, true success. And for me, it's past the point of believability when they come out and say they want to win a World Series, because nothing they've done, I'll say, like when they agreed to do the rebuild and kind of start over, that was a real step where I thought, okay, maybe this team understands that, like, this isn't going to work. We have to get better. We have to build it up. But once they build it up, and they've had success, but they haven't had to spend a lot. They're like, well, let's just do it this way. Like the measure of success, if they say the measure of success is winning the World Series, you can point to the last 3 off seasons and really the last 3 years of investment as no, you don't.
I think the biggest fear for most Mariner fans, Ryan, is this. I think they're going to fast forward 10 years from now, look back and go, they just squandered the best pitching staff in the history of the organization because they just could not, want to spend, find the right amount of offense to associate it with that pitching. And it's going to be similar to, I think, fans of my age, when you look back at that, the teams from 96, 97, and 98, when you go, my God, that team had 3, 4 Hall of Famers on it. And they could not win because, for whatever reason, they just could not develop that team, with Griffey and then of course Randy and A-Rod and Edgar. I mean, I know A-Rod's not going to get in, but he's a Hall of Famer. So, I mean, look at the talent that they had and the regret that you couldn't win a world championship with that. And I just think 10 years from now, that's I think the biggest worry for many fans. They're going to look back and go, God, we had George Kirby, when he's, let's say, not even 10 years, when these guys are pitching in different uniforms and winning a World Series in October, and you go, God, remember we had George Kirby and Logan Gilbert, and God, Brian Wu sure looked good in pinstripes, and Bryce Miller. It's gonna be a tough one to swallow.
Yeah, I mean you just, and those teams you mentioned about the early, they never even made it to a World Series. No. I mean, like that's, somebody, I remember somebody on Twitter was complaining that the Mariners are going to be the next Braves. The Braves rotation 1 had 3 Hall of Famers in it. So it's a little bit better than this
They won a
rotation.
World Series.
They won a World Series. They played in the 90s. They made the playoffs 8 times and played in 5 World Series. They
I'll
only
take
won
that.
1. I mean, like, that's the vagaries of baseball. Say once you get in the postseason, shit can go wrong and you can have problems. But getting there, and getting, playing how many games at home and building up the civic cachet with your fan base to say, like, they're trying to win. They're there. This is who we are. I mean, like, that's the difference. Like, and I don't think they believe this, and they're just misreading it. They're losing this fan base at a rapid rate. Will people still go? Yes, they will. But the level of investment that they could have gotten for competing these last 3 years, they could have owned the city again.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't have been hard.
And you're competing for people's dollar as prices raise for everything. You're competing for the entertainment dollar. And I think we're going to see this year. I'm going to be real curious of how the reaction is from fans. That's going to lead me into my next question, because then, what's the TV thing going to look like? You start not to have a great product on TV, and it's not the same that you're used to. People just get turned off about it and like, God, what's this? Maybe I'm not going to watch as much anymore. So along those lines, what's up with Root Sports? What do we know right now, February 5th, of what it's going to look like? Spring training, I mean, they got games coming up pretty soon here. What is it going to look like? Who's going to be on the call? Who's not going to be there? Do we know any of this stuff?
Not specifically, I mean, I
know that you're willing to comment on yet.
Well, nothing that I have hard evidence to comment on. From the logistical standpoint, it'll still be on your cable provider, whether it's Fubo or Comcast, Xfinity, or whatever, and Spectrum here in Montana.
But there's no streaming service like the Twins just announced.
No, because they can't, because like their deals with Contract and Fubo and these stuff, YouTube TV, they can't just stream their product directly to a consumer. They can't run the subscription. So you have to subscribe to a third party.
Why can the Twins do that?
Because they don't have a network.
Oh, okay.
They were part of the Diamond Sports Group.
Okay.
And as part of that settlement, it allowed for teams to negotiate a team to fan deal. Obviously, I think the Mariners will get to that point, but these contracts that they have with all these cable providers, which is like 10 of them, all have to run out. And so I mean, if things go south and nobody's watching, I'm sure some of these cable providers are like, we're ready to be done with you guys. But yeah, so they can't. That's why they can't do it. And you can't. The MLB TV package will never offer the blackout restriction. We'll never remove it. That's part of the deal too with the teams. If a team wants to provide streaming to fans, streaming broadcast to fans, they get that, and MLB TV doesn't. So they keep that separate.
What about who's gonna be on my TV screen?
I would assume at this point, like, they haven't announced anything, so I'm guessing it's kind of who they have.
Right.
I mean, it's another way too. Who's like, well, if they're not,
they haven't really announced anything yet. That's the thing, is like there's no. I think people that work there don't even know. But
no, I think my friends at Root Sports would like to know what the hell's going on.
Well, that's a
like
problem.
I know that they've had some production staff on the inside let go because of this deal with MLB to produce the games.
Mm-hmm.
But, as far as the on-air talent, nobody knows. And I think that's the thing, though, is we've watched over the years, it's hard to sell this team and sell the content, unless they're really good. So, like, you've seen the post-game or the pre-game and the post-game shows get reduced down to nothing because it's cost-saving measure. It's like it's a very typical media thing. When you start losing viewers or readers, you make cuts and give them less. It's really smart of the newspaper industry at times. But I don't know. I don't really know what they're going to do with this. I've been told, and I was told this last spring, they're looking to be able to stream the spring training games.
Oh, the Game Changer's back.
Yeah, kind of the Game Changer.
Who is the dad that's going to be doing it for the Mariners?
The live scoring too, and then
who's doing
when the foul when the foul ball hits the screen and makes the phone go like this.
Hey, that wasn't. Why did you give that an error? That was a hit.
Yeah.
It went. First of all, sir, it went right to the shortstop. It went right off his glove, and then he threw it away. That's not a hit. That's actually an error. That's not how we rule it. That was a hit. Can you change that?
Or when, like I said, when it gets ajar and you got a big piece of chain link in the middle of it. So,
God, a game changer. I can't wait. It's coming up. Little League starting soon. I love game changer. Anyone want to run game changer today? Anyone? Anyone? No. Okay. I don't know how to. I'll do it, but I don't know how to do it.
So I think they're going to be able to do that, provide a streaming aspect. What I was told last year, anyways, is that they were going to, Arizona State has their journalism school that they may be able to hire some kids because, apparently it's not an insignificant amount of money to televise like a spring training game, roughly $40,000, and they weren't getting the viewers or the sponsors to generate that. But if you can operate it on like 4 cameras and have one of their own employees do the directing and producing on that. I think they'll do that, which is good. I mean,
good experience for the kids.
Which is good. So I don't have to listen to people complain about not being able to watch a bunch of quad A guys from the fourth inning on in a game.
Hey, a couple of quick little housekeeping things. The Matt Brash, 3rd week of April. Is that what he said?
Yeah, that's what they're hoping for.
Oh, that's just hoping for.
Well, that's what they say he's on schedule for, I guess would be the better way.
Santos, though, good?
Yeah, apparently he's all healthy, so whatever that means.
Munoz appears healthy. Still have some issues. I mean, they still need, the Taylor thing's not good. So how long's Taylor out for? They don't know yet?
No. I mean, that lat thing is,
Troy Taylor, for people who don't know, he's got a lat strain.
Yeah, lat strain. I don't know. That's, that's what happened to Santos last year and kind of kept him out for quite a while. So, it's usually 6 weeks, I think.
And what was the last thing? Do you miss Landman? God, I miss Landman.
Yeah, I haven't really found anything to fulfill my TV watching.
There's nothing to fulfill it.
No. And then,
God, I miss her. I miss all of them.
I freaking, one, I miss having 2 TVs. And so, trying to watch college hoops. But, trying to find, and I sound like my dad, but, Michigan State UCLA was on Peacock last night. And then, you can't flip back and forth because one's on Peacock and then one's on your cable provider. That's just frustrating.
Hey, did Mick Cronin complain afterwards that Michigan State had to travel out to L.A.?
No, I don't think so. But
God,
you know what?
Tom Izzo's going to be upset,
after he
0-2 in L.A.
But after he torched his team, I think they're 7-2 or something.
They played a little better. Yeah, it's okay to get into your team sometime. Just kind of read him the riot act.
Mick Cronin's got some little man syndrome. I mean,
of course he does. We all do.
No, and I mean, do the Cougs even have 5 guys to put out on the floor?
We do not. We went to the intramural, trying to get some kids off the intramural court, see if they can play. Yeah,
those guys.
Tough end of the season.
Those guys spend a lot of time talking shit on the court. Maybe just play.
Well, one particular does.
Well, yeah, but it kind of rubs off on some of the other ones, too.
Nate Calmes just needs to concentrate on maybe just not turning the ball over every time down the court and trying to play hero ball.
Well, I thought you were talking about Watts and him talking all the time.
Well, what, Lawan or Isaiah?
Both.
Well, they both talk. Isaiah is a big talker, but I don't know, kind of. Well, Isaiah will probably be in a Husky uniform next season, so.
Well, Calmes, he just shoots a little too much, man.
A little too much? A lot too much. Yeah, but I mean, they really don't have any. But there's no one else there. No one else to do anything. So,
Calmes is like that guy you play at pickup who played in the NWAC, so he feels like he has to just dominate the basketball.
Yeah. All right. When do you? So next week when we talk, are you in Peoria?
I fly down Tuesday evening.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I'll talk with you, and then I'll have my traditional first meal of spring training, which is 2 double-doubles from In-N-Out Burger.
God, we talk to you next week in sunshine. You're out of the snow. You're in the sunshine covering baseball. And we get the video of the bullpens and the cleats on the ground and the ball hitting the glove. It's a wonderful time.
I'll tell you what, I'll try and get there early and like take some video of it, and then I'll send you the sound so you can play it on your
God,
show.
I love it. That's my favorite. All right, there he is, Ryan Divish, the Ryan Divish Podcast, brought to you by Chalet Bowl, Washington's oldest operating bowling alley, proudly serving the community since 1941. Thank you, Reggie, for your support. They are family-owned and operated for 40 years. Book your next reservation at chaletbowl.com. You can find the Ryan Divish Show up on YouTube. When you're there, please subscribe there. Also on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, of course, always up at pucksports.com. All right, Divish, we'll see you next week.
Take it easy, man.